Welcome back to Billionaire Success Lessons. Today, I want to tell you the story of a man whose journey is different from many of the billionaire stories people usually hear. Rob Walton did not begin in a garage with no money. He did not invent a product from nothing in a tiny apartment. He was born into one of the most important business families in American history, but that does not mean his path was easy, automatic, or unimportant. In some ways, his challenge was just as difficult. He had to prove that he had to help protect it, guide it, expand it, and carry the weight of a name that the world already knew. Rob Walton's story is not simply about starting a business. It is about stewardship, discipline, leadership, and the burden of carrying forward a legacy so large that one mistake could shake an empire. That is why Rob Walton's life matters so much. His success story is not built on the romance of being unknown. It is built on the pressure. Even fully become himself. Some people have to fight to be noticed. Others are born into a spotlight they did not create, and then spend their lives trying to prove they deserve to stand in it. That is a different kind of test. A quieter one, a heavier one. And for Rob Walton, that test began early. He was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1944, the oldest of 4 children in the Walton family. He studied at the University of Arkansas, earned a business degree, and later received his law degree from Columbia Law School before taking on major leadership roles at Walmart. He practiced law with Connor and Winters, a firm that represented the company. That part of his path matters because it shows something essential about him. He did not jump straight into the chairman's office. He built training, perspective, and legal discipline first. Later, he joined Walmart, where he served in several roles, including senior vice president, corporate secretary, general counsel, and vice chairman before becoming chairman after his father's death in 1992. And that is the first important lesson in Rob Walton's journey. Real leadership is often prepared long before it becomes visible. The world usually celebrates the title, but the title is only the surface. Underneath it are years of learning, observation, restraint, and quiet growth. Rob Walton was not simply handed a giant company and told to smile for the cameras. He had to understand the law, understand the business, understand governance, and understand the culture of a company that was growing fast and carrying the bold vision of his father. To understand Rob Walton's rise, you also have to understand the shadow and power of Sam Walton. Sam Walton was not just any founder. He was the founder of Walmart, the man who built it into the largest retail sales chain in the United States by 1990. That means Rob did not grow up near an ordinary family business. He grew up near a force that was changing American retail. Imagine what that does to a person. On one hand, it opens doors. On the other hand, it creates enormous expectations. When your father becomes a legend, the world watches to see whether you will become capable, dependent, or invisible. Rob Walton had to define himself inside one of the biggest family business stories in America, and that was not simple. Because when your life is connected to something huge. You are always in danger of being reduced to one label: the founder's son, the heir, the one who inherited the fortune. But real lives are more complicated than labels. Rob Walton's challenge was not merely to possess wealth. It was to help preserve and guide a company that had become central to the lives of millions of customers, employees, and shareholders. That responsibility is not light. It is not symbolic. It is real, and it requires a different kind of courage than starting from scratch. In 1992, after Sam Walton died, Rob Walton became chairman of Walmart's board. That moment was not just a corporate transition. It was a deeply emotional turning point. A son was stepping into leadership after the death of a father, whose name was tied to one of the most important retail businesses in the world. There are few positions more difficult than taking over after a founder dies. Founders are not only executives, they are symbols. They create the story, the culture, the mythology, the standards, and the original energy of the company. To follow a founder is to inherit not only the business, but also the comparisons. Every decision gets measured against the person who came before. Every change is judged. Every weakness is magnified. Rob Walton had to lead under all of that pressure from the very beginning of his time as chairman. This is where his story. Rob Walton was not known for. He was more reserved, more measured, more deliberate. But do not confuse quiet with weakness. Some of the strongest leaders in the world are not loud. They do not dominate the room with performance. They steady the room with judgment. Rob Walton's strength was not spectacle. It was discipline. It was continuity. It was the ability to help Walmart move from founder-led intensity into long-term institutional strength. During his years as chairman, Walmart grew far beyond the scale it had already reached. His tenure covered a time when the company became more global, more operationally complex, and even more central to the retail world. That kind of growth is not the work of one man alone. Of course, but leadership at that level still matters enormously. It sets tone. It shapes oversight. It influences culture. It determines whether a company gets sloppy or stays disciplined as it grows larger. Rob Walton helped guide Walmart through the difficult transition from founder's company into a giant modern corporation. And that is a huge achievement, even if it is not always told in exciting Hollywood language. Because starting something is difficult, but scaling it without losing control is difficult in a different way. The bigger a company becomes, the more ways it can go wrong. Bureaucracy can grow. Focus can weaken. Values can fade. Leaders can become arrogant. Systems can crack under their own size. Rob Walton had to help oversee a company that was no longer just opening stores. It was managing enormous supply chains, public market expectations, governance questions, international growth, legal complexity, and the operational reality of becoming one of the most powerful retailers on earth. That is where many people misunderstand success. They think success is mostly about motion, more stores, more money, more visibility. But sustainable success is also about structure. It is about building systems strong. It is about protecting a company from the chaos that success itself creates. Rob Walton's contribution to Walmart fits that deeper kind of success. He was part of the leadership that helped turn a fast-growing family business into a durable institution. There is another reason his story deserves respect. Rob Walton did not only carry opportunity, he carried risk. When a company becomes as large as Walmart, every decision affects not a few dozen people, but entire communities, workforces, vendors, and industries. That means leadership is never just about private gain. It also becomes public responsibility. The larger the company, the heavier the consequences of judgment. Rob Walton had to think in that scale. He had to weigh decisions not simply as a son protecting a family name, but as a chairman connected to a company whose reach touched millions. And there is emotional weight in that too. Most people will never know what it feels like to carry a name that is both a blessing and a burden. The Walton name opened doors, yes. If Rob succeeded, some people would. If he struggled, some people would say he had failed a legacy. The hardest traps in life. To be judged in a way where your effort is often underestimated and your mistakes are quickly personalized. Yet he stayed in the work. He stayed in the discipline. He stayed in the responsibility. That matters because greatness is not always dramatic. Sometimes greatness is staying steady for years inside pressure that never fully leaves. Rob Walton's story also reminds us that leadership does not have to look identical from person to person. Some leaders are visionaries who live in constant public visibility. Others are institutional builders who strengthen the machine moving wisely. Rob Walton belonged more to that second category. He was not trying to imitate his father's public identity. He was trying to help Walmart endure across generations. And there is wisdom in that. Many people fail because they think the person who came before them. But authentic leadership is not imitation. It is responsibility expressed through your own strengths. That is especially important in family businesses. In family legacies, there is always a danger that the next generation either clings too tightly to the past or rebels against it without purpose. But the strongest successors learn how to honor what came before while building the systems needed for what comes next. Rob Walton had to of the company's roots while allowing it to function at a global level beyond its founder's personal reach. And think about how difficult that transition is. A founder often leads with instinct, grit, and direct personal influence. A global corporation requires governance, structure. Those are not the same muscles. Rob Walton's story shows us that succession is its own form of entrepreneurship, not entrepreneurship in the sense, but in the sense of building the next stage of its life without breaking what made it. That is not easy. In fact, it may be one. Because when people look at family wealth, from the outside, they often imagine comfort. They imagine certainty. They imagine a smooth road. But inheritance brings its own form of challenge. It asks whether you will become lazy or responsible, It asks whether you will consume the legacy or strengthen it. It asks whether you will hide behind a name or live up to it. Rob Walton's life suggests that he chose responsibility. He did not walk away from the company. He served it for decades. He lived inside the long work of governance, leadership, and continuity. Over time, he also became known for his involvement in conservation and environmental causes. That dimension matters because it shows that his life was not defined only by boardrooms and balance sheets. Spend years carrying institutional responsibility. He also turned attention toward broader causes and long-range stewardship beyond retail. And that brings us to another important chapter of his life: sports ownership. In 2022, the Walton Penner Group, led by Rob, Broncos in what was widely reported sports franchise at the time. Then, in 2023, the Broncos transferred the league's controlling owner designation from Rob Walton to Greg Penner. Though Walton remained part of the ownership structure, that chapter reveals something interesting. Even after his long Walmart era, Rob Walton did not vanish into silence. He remained connected to major leadership and ownership roles, while also allowing the operational face of leadership to shift in practical ways. There is a lesson in that too. Long-term success is not always about holding every title forever. Sometimes it is about knowing how to transition wisely, knowing when to guide, when to step back, when to let others carry the public weight, and when to protect continuity rather than personal attention. That kind of maturity is rare. Some people cling to power because it defines them. Others understand that legacy is bigger than title. Rob Walton's path suggests a man more concerned with stewardship than with performance. And that word, stewardship, may be the best way to understand his entire journey. Because Rob Walton's story is not the story of a man who needed to prove he could dream. It is the story of a man who needed to prove he could carry expectation, carry legacy, carry a giant company through generational transition, carry the invisible pressure of a famous surname, carry responsibility over long periods of time without needing constant applause. That may not sound as romantic as the classic startup story, but it is deeply meaningful. In real life, many people are not called to invent from zero. Guide and elevate what already exists. There is honor in that. There is difficulty in that. There is purpose in that. And Rob Walton's life offers a powerful example of how valuable that kind of leadership can be. It also reminds us that quiet people should never be underestimated. The world often rewards noise with attention, but attention is not the same as substance. Rob Walton was not the loudest billionaire in American life. He was not the most theatrical. But for decades he sat close to one of the most consequential corporations in the world and helped it move forward through an era of enormous growth and complexity. Sometimes the people who shape history most deeply are not the ones constantly talking about themselves. They are the ones doing the long work of keeping something massive, stable, disciplined, and alive. So what can we learn from Rob Walton's journey? First, success is not one size fits all. Some people build by inventing, others build by stewarding. Both matter. Second, inheritance is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a test. What matters is what you do with what you receive. Third, quiet leadership can be powerful leadership. You do not need to become flashy to become effective. Fourth, legacy is heavy. If you inherit something great, your responsibility is not merely to enjoy it, but to strengthen it. Fifth, the longer the horizon, the more discipline matters. Real success is not always proved in a year. Sometimes it is proved over decades. And finally, identity must be larger than title. Rob Walton's journey through Walmart, conservation work, and sports ownership suggests a life shaped not just by wealth, but by long-term responsibility, measured judgment, and institutional thinking. If you're listening to this during a season where life has placed responsibility on your shoulders, this story should encourage you. Not all meaningful success begins with creating something no one has ever seen. Sometimes meaningful success begins when you are trusted with something valuable and carry it well. Maybe you inherited a family duty. Maybe you stepped into a business after someone else built the foundation. Maybe you're trying to live up to a standard that feels bigger than you. If so, Rob Walton's story offers an important reminder. Your task is not to imitate someone else's personality. Your task is to bring your own discipline, your own judgment, and your own integrity to the role you have been given. That is how legacies survive. And there is one more thing worth remembering. The world often celebrates bold beginnings, but it sometimes forgets faithful endurance. Yet faithful endurance is where so much real value is created. Day after day, year after year, decision after decision, pressure after pressure. Rob Walton's life is a testament to that quieter form of greatness. He lived not at the beginning of the Walmart story, but at one of its most important transitions. And he helped make sure the story did not collapse under its own size. In the end, Rob Walton's journey is not just about a billionaire family. It is about responsibility. It is about carrying something important without letting ego distort the mission. It is about leading in a way that is calm enough to last. It is about understanding that success is not only the power to build, but also the wisdom to preserve, strengthen, and pass forward. And that is exactly why Rob Walton's story deserves a place here on Billionaire Success Lessons, because his life reminds us that not every empire is built by the person who lays the first brick. Sometimes history is shaped by the person who keeps the walls standing, expands the foundation, and makes sure the structure can endure for the next generation. That is real leadership. That is real discipline. And that is the deeper power of Rob Walton's story.